photographers and reporters, Aaron here, back with a new scoop on the next upcoming character, Charlotte. But before we dive into the report, I just want to say that if you like my content, why not take a bite out of that delicious, freshly baked, mackerel-flavored subscribe button down below. Also, if you look a bit further in the description of this video, you'll find any chapters for this video that you're specifically looking for, and any music selections in case you might like something you hear in the background. But with that out of the way, let's hop right into the news. Charlotte is a cryo catalyst support with an emphasis on the driver role. Her normal attacks deal cryo damage with a normal ICD. There's nothing special here, but her charge attack does have a special property. As always, since she is a catalyst character, her charge attacks don't have an elemental ICD. Her charge attacks are also the ones that summon her Numa-aligned damage once every 6 seconds. Her elemental skill is up next. It allows Charlotte to take a picture of enemies, which will then deal damage, generate 3 particles, and apply a mark to those enemies. This mark will deal damage once per 1.5 seconds over 6 seconds, and it will apply cryo every other hit. This skill also has a held version, which simply deals more damage, lasts longer, has a longer cooldown, and generates 5 particles. This means that both of her skills have their own use, as the tap version is best used when she wants to be on field, while the hold version is best used when she wants to be off field. Next up is her burst, which, when cast, deals AoE damage and heals her entire team based on her attack. After the initial cast, it leaves an AoE field that deals damage to enemies over time and heals allies over time within the field 8 times over 4 seconds. As far as I am aware, this also has a normal ICD, meaning it will apply cryo 3 times over its duration. But now that we're on this topic of conversation, let's talk about her application as a whole real quick. When using her skill, burst, normal attacks, and charge attacks together, Charlotte ends up having the second fastest cryo application in the game, as she can apply her element about once a second. This amount can only be beaten by the likes of Ayaka, who also happens to have a shorter duration on her application. However, if not using her normal and charge attacks, this application is much slower, especially if only using her skill, as it will drop to about once per 2 seconds with her burst and once per 3 without it. This massive variance in application is mainly why I see her being best used as a cryo driver, since this specific aspect of her is incredibly strong. Enough of application though, let's move on to her Ascension passives. Her first decreases the cooldown of her skill by 2 seconds when an enemy marked by it is defeated, but this effect can only occur up to 4 times per second. This passive almost single-handedly allows her elemental skill to be constantly up, kind of like if she had the sacrificial fragments built directly into her kit. It's pretty good and rather convenient, but only when her team is tearing through enemies. Her 4th Ascension passive is merely just okay. It increases her healing bonus and cryo damage bonus based on how many members in her party are from Fontaine. For every party member that is from Fontaine other than herself, Charlotte will receive a 5% healing bonus. For every party member not from Fontaine, Charlotte will receive a 5% cryo damage bonus. These percent multipliers are very small though, so they don't add too much for both her healing and damage output. Instead, they're just a nice bonus. Charlotte's talent priority is quite tricky since she can play multiple roles. It's also tricky due to the fact that she does not have a lot of damage, yet she heals quite a lot, and most of her numbers come from her talent levels over stats. In most situations, her kit's main use is its application, which does not scale with talent level, so the only thing of necessity to level is her elemental burst, or the massive healing she offers. After that, her skill and normal attacks can be leveled together, or not at all, with her skill having a minor priority due to its uptime. Thankfully, Charlotte's combos are much more simple. If using her off-field, Charlotte's main combo is her normal skill and burst. Using her hold skill here, while she's off-field, is better than her tap, simply because it has a longer duration. However, this duration isn't insanely long, so she should be the 2nd or 3rd character used in a team rotation. If you're using Charlotte on-field as a driver, then using her tap skill is much more important due to the slight bit more energy generation, extra application, and ease of use. Then using a rotation of 2 normal attacks and 1 charge attack would be the most effective at applying a lot of cryo. However, this would consume a crap ton of stamina very quickly, so using the more energy-conserving option of normal attack spam with some charge attacks weaved in could be incredibly beneficial. But with that done, to Charlotte's Constellations. Charlotte's first constellation enables her to heal the team even more. When her burst heals a nearby party member, which would be her entire team, they are marked for 6 seconds and healed once every 2 seconds while they have the mark on. This is a massive healing buff as it increases her healing output by about 40%. However, she was already full healing the team, and she was already healing the on-field party member over time, so the only time this constellation would actually be of any use is when she's paired with Fiorina or when she's against Corrosion, making it pretty bad. However, there have been some rumors that there might be a new artifact set that grants buffs after a character has overhealed a party member. If these rumors end up becoming true, then this constellation would actually be very good, as it could potentially increase the uptime of the passive and will also guarantee it. Charlotte's C2 is also not that good. It increases her attack by 10% per enemy marked by her elemental skill, up to a max of 30% attack. This sucks because it does not allow her to get the max buff in all situations, and because she barely scales. It merely increases her stats by about 3 to 4%, which is practically nothing. Her 3rd constellation increases the level of her burst by 3. This is fine, but her burst is used mostly for healing, which she already had enough of anyway. This means that, again, this is a constellation with the specific intent to be used in tandem with Fiorina or Corrosion, or with the possible new artifact set. Her C4 is much better though, as it allows her burst to deal 10% more damage to targets marked with her skill. Additionally, she will restore 2 energy to herself every time she deals damage this way, up to a max of 10 per burst. This constellation is incredibly good, as not only does it allow her to output about 7% more damage, but it will also allow her to use weapons other than Favonius Codex, or be used in more teams because her energy cost is now manageable. This is her best constellation in my opinion, as it does so much for her that the other constellations just cannot do. Her 5th constellation increases the level of her skill by 3. This is where a majority of her damage output is focused, which does benefit from the skill level. However, her damage was pretty poor before and doesn't get too much better, as it only leads to about a 5% damage increase. Charlotte C6 is okay. It allows her to drop an icicle down once per 6 seconds when the active character deals damage to an enemy marked by her skill with a normal or charged attack. This icicle deals damage and heals the active character. This constellation will increase her damage output by about 15% and will increase her total healing output by about 6%. On top of this, it also helps her apply even more cryo to targets, which is very important for her driver role. This constellation is pretty good, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not insane, just slightly above average. All in all, Charlotte's constellations are quite bad. They're mostly just small increases on her already small numbers. The only ones that are worth it, in my opinion, are her 4th due to the energy generation and her 6th due to the extra cryo application. Otherwise, her constellations kind of suck. In terms of artifact options, Charlotte has many to choose from. The most obvious and most versatile choice she has is Noblesse Oblige, which will increase her burst damage and grant her entire team some attack. This is her best all-around option, and if you're not looking for anything specific, then I would wholeheartedly recommend this set. However, since she doesn't have good scaling, and since she has low base stats, this set will not prove to be an insane increase to her damage. If you are looking to enable her personal damage output, the best artifact set for this would be the Blizzard Slayer set, which will increase her damage output by about 34%. This isn't huge, but it can be pretty helpful. It can be so effective on her that it can lead to her team's largest damage output depending on the situation. Due to her low personal scalings, Charlotte can also utilize 4-star artifact sets extremely well. One of these artifacts is the Exile set, which grants energy recharge to Charlotte, but also helps her battery her team even more. While this will be complete overkill if she uses the Favonius Codex, it is a great option if she's not using the Catalyst. However, debatably her best artifact set would be the other 4-star Instructor set, as it will increase the team's elemental mastery by 120 for 8 seconds when she triggers an elemental reaction. This is a large elemental mastery bonus and can prove to be insanely valuable in every comp other than Mono Cryo and Freeze. This set is absolutely fantastic for her, and will normally prove to be her best in slot artifact set due to the niche that she excels in. In terms of stat priority, Charlotte's is very easy, especially since the difference between her main DPS stats and support stats are almost the exact same. She has large energy issues, so she will need to be run with energy recharge on the sands, unless she uses Favonius Codex or some other way to generate a lot of energy. Then you have the option for cryo damage bonus on the goblet if you're looking for more damage, or you can even go attack percent if you're looking for slightly more healing. However, this attack increase will not impact her healing and damage as much as just using cryo damage percent, so that's normally preferred. And going for a crit rate circlet specifically will usually be the best. However, depending on what you're looking for, crit damage, attack percent, or healing bonus can also work well, as there's very little difference between the options here. Don't instinct too much on what main stats are best. It's best to focus mostly on solving her energy recharge issue, which can get a little complicated. Charlotte can be played both on-field and off-field, and her skill can generate 2 different amounts of energy. On top of that, her 4th constellation also grants her energy, which adds even more variance. Before C4, she needs an intense amount of energy to burst consistently. This can shoot up to 260% energy recharge if used without a battery, while off-field, and without an energy-generating weapon. If using Favonius Codex, this will only drop to about 215%, which is a massive decrease, but still pretty high. This issue is only solved after she reaches her C4, which helps drop her energy requirement to 225% at base, or about 185% when wielding Favonius Codex. This will continue to drop if she's used on field, as her requirement here will be up to 235% without her C4 and 205% with it at a base. With Favonius Codex, this max requirement goes up to merely 165% without her C4 or 145% with it. So what's the limit for her energy recharge? What should you aim for? This all depends on what you're running with her, and it shifts dramatically depending on the situation. However, it seems like sticking to about 200% would be a safe bet if using Favonius with her, or aim for about 230% when using any other weapon. Only after that energy recharge stat issue is solved would it be a good idea to work on her other stats. These stats don't matter too much, and she has no harsh limits, so running her with attack percent and crit in the rest of the substats will usually lead to the highest damage and healing output. With that out of the way, let's move on to her weapons. Charlotte has a good amount of weapon options available. However, there is one that stands above the rest. As I might have made it blatantly clear in the last section, Favonius Codex is a must on her. Charlotte has such insane energy issues that this weapon becomes basically the only one you can run on her, as Charlotte's other weapon options have an insanely hard time reaching her energy requirement to burst consistently. Even after C4, Charlotte has energy issues when used off-field, though not as immense as they were before. Though the only time when using a weapon other than Favonius Codex would be a good option would be when using her as a main DPS. But then the question becomes, what weapons are best for her here? As a main DPS, her best weapon is the Cash Flow Supervision, but only when the passive is stacked. This weapon is insane on her as it helps her deal damage, healing, and apply more cryo. However, if you can't build max stacks, it will drop a few spots down below. Second best is the Skyward Atlas due to the massive amount of attack it offers, plus the elemental damage bonus and the extra damage proc. This weapon is very powerful on Charlotte and will lead to her highest overall personal damage and healing output. Third is Tullatulla's Remembrance, which will be a much more consistent version of the Cash Flow Supervision. This weapon is fantastic as it offers a good amount of what Cash Flow does, except with slightly less stats. The times where this could be better than Cash Flow Supervision is when she's not taking a lot of damage. Otherwise, Cash Flow will just be better. In fourth place, we have the Lost Prayer, which offers a crap ton of crit rate and a decent attack. That's pretty much it, but Charlotte can make some good use of it. Then there's the Widsith, which is pretty strong and versatile due to its buffs and the great amount of attack percent it can offer. Up next, we have the Oathsworn Eye, which offers a great amount of attack and energy recharge. This weapon is incredibly versatile due to these simple stats as they work for both her support and DPS builds. After that, we're back to Favonius Codex, which offers so much energy generation that it will allow her team to build more into damage. This means that while her weapon will output lower damage than the weapons above, it will lead to a higher team damage output, especially since hers is so low. For example, if we include Xiangling's damage into the mix, we can see that Favonius is just straight up better than every other option. This weapon is just too good on her, and will consistently be her best in slot weapon option in all circumstances, so I will 100% recommend you use this weapon over every other one. However, some other good options I can recommend would be the Skyward Atlas and Oathsworn Eye, as they deal similar damage to Favonius while also being pretty easy to obtain. 3 more additions to my recommendations are Cash Flow Supervision if you have it, Tullatulla's Remembrance for the same reason, and Lost Prayer, as they are all fantastic options, but not usually as great as the other weapons, while being just as costly or much more so. Before we move on to team comps, let's talk about Charlotte's synergies. Charlotte has low stats and low scalings across the board. However, her violent amount of cryo application enables her to work in melt comps. This means that she pairs insanely well with Bennett, as he offers her an insane amount of attack for both her damage and healing to scale with. Without these two things, she simply cannot output almost any damage whatsoever. On top of that, he is an integral piece to every melt team out there. Since Charlotte's personal numbers output is significantly less without him, Bennett is just way too good to pass up. However, she also has Fiorina to pair with, as Charlotte can make up for Fiorina's main issues. Fiorina is the best Hydro character in the game, but she requires a healer to be paired with her, and she needs a situation where her slower Hydro application is not a large detriment. Charlotte is able to fully enable Fiorina, as she could full heal the team for Fiorina to build her fanfare stacks. Additionally, Charlotte will heal the on-field character over time, which will allow Fiorina to heal her off-field party members. This means that when paired together, they can keep the team at full HP with ease, even through Fiorina's massive HP reduction. They will also be able to chain freeze consistently, which will allow them to keep the correct auras up in many teams. Fiorina will also allow Charlotte to deal a good bit of damage while only building into her healing. She is Charlotte's best teammate to the point where I will almost always recommend pairing them together, at least for this video. In terms of team options, Charlotte has a good amount going for her. Because she has consistent and off-field cryo application, she can work decently well in almost any team that simply wants cryo application. The first one that comes to mind is freeze teams, where she will work as a decent defensive support. Here, she will usually offer enough cryo application to enable constant freezing on the enemies while also healing the team. There's not a lot of supports for freeze teams that can heal the entire team, so Charlotte can be an upgrade to some in this case. However, in most situations, she will be one of the worst of the 5 other cryo defensive supports. There are also physical teams that she can work in as a pure defensive unit. She will offer consistent cryo application to help burn through certain shields while still enabling superconduct. However, Chi-Chi can do a similar job while also outputting significantly more damage with the clam set, but hey, she's an option. Up next is a team comp where she can act as both an on and off-field support. Charlotte can work pretty well in fridge teams, especially with the instructor set, which will buff the team's bloom damage output. It's also because you'd be pairing her with 3 of the strongest units in the game. It worked for Chongyun in the original national comp, so I think it's safe to say it'll work here too. Speaking of the national comp, where she will really pop off is in melt teams as a cryo driver. When paired with Xiangling and Bennett, she will help enable her team to deal a metric crap ton of damage. However, she has almost no damage herself, which just makes this comp a worse version of other national team. Now let's move on to the rating, starting with damage. Charlotte deals almost no damage without Shenhe, Bennett, or Fiorina. She lacks base stats, she lacks scaling, she has small flat talent multipliers, and she has a major energy issue which doesn't allow her to build into damage. Her damage just sucks, it's so incredibly bad, but she does technically have some damage, unlike a character like Mika or Yunjin, who just kind of don't, so I will give her 1 star here. However, in terms of application, she has a lot. She has the fastest cryo application in the game behind Ayaka, which is fantastic for enabling forward melt. While this can only be enabled when she's on field, which kind of sucks, she still does have enough to keep applying cryo consistently and has a burst of application to overtake any other element. So I think she earns an amazing 4 for application while on field, but if I were to rate her application for off field, it would be like a 1.5. For offensive utility, she has merely her application and artifact sets, nothing else, but she can use every buffing artifact set in the game, which is nice, so I'll give her a below average of a 2. In terms of battery potential, she has the Favonius Codex, which is fantastic for her while she's on field. However, when she's off field, she will not be able to generate as much energy. With that in mind, I'll give her a 3.5 for battery potential while on field, or an average 2.5 while off field. In terms of defense, all she has is healing. However, it's a lot of healing and it's team-wide. She has both burst healing and heals over time for everyone on the team, and these things just get better at C1, C3, and C6. Her healing is so large that she will end up overhealing the team, which in my opinion earns her a 3.5. And finally, we have versatility. Since she is competing with a third of the cryo cast, she's not going to be the best in most situations. Her skill allows her to apply a lot of cryo in a good amount of situations, which lets her act as a decent support in a good amount of cryo comps. However, if she's used on field, which is where most of her power lies, she cannot be used in many different compositions. So I'll give her a 1.5 as an on-field character, or an above average 3 when using her as an off-field character. That means, in total, she will be at an average of 2.5 while being used as an on-field driver, or a below average of a 2 if used while off-field. This sums up my thoughts exactly, as I see her as a rather decent option if used with a certain playstyle, though I don't see her having much worth outside of that niche. But now it's time for me to pass the conversation on to you. What do you all think of Charlotte? Do you plan to get her? Do you think she's worse or better than I do? How do you plan to build her, and who are you pairing her with? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. But that's all I have for today. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you all next time. Bye bye!